romper room where we ball a break. Big wins, big losses, all at stake. Party vibe, poker life, always crunk. Feel rich, feel broke, that's just the funk, yeah. Seen boys rise, seen boys fall. Bluffing stacks, risking it all. Got the queens, thought I locked the pot. Straight flush flip, now I'm feeling shot. It's the hustle, it's the grind, no time to assume. All in a full life in the romper room.
All right, we're diving into some seriously crazy shit today, folks. Double board PLO bomb pots. This is like where regular PLO goes on a cocaine binge. 2 boards, everyone's throwing in antes. Pre-flop pots are already huge right out the gate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, it's like a whole different animal. A lot of players try to use their normal PLO strategies, and they just get completely destroyed. The dynamics are just so different.
Exactly. And that's why we're here. This deep dive is going to be your lifeline. We've got articles from upswing poker videos from Jay Nanda's Crush Live Poker, and of course the legend himself, the PLO professor. We're talking the A-team of PLO knowledge here.
Right. We're going to break down all the key stuff from these guys, right? Give you the tools to actually win in this format, not just survive.
We're not here to mess around.
Yeah.
So let's just skip the basic, what is double board PLO crap?
Yeah.
Our listeners are smarter than that. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty. What's the first thing that trips people up in these bomb pots?
All right. So one of the biggest leaks, over betting on the flop, happens all the time. Someone flops top set or a monster draw, and they just shove it all in. Like they're invincible.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
It feels like a power move, right? But something tells me it's not the best idea in this format. What's the deal with that?
It's a recipe for disaster, man. First off, in double board PLO, your equity is split between the 2 boards. You might have the nuts on one board, but if you're weak on the other, that big bet can come back to bite you in the ass hard.
So you're saying it's not just about, how good your hand is on one board. It's the total equity across both boards.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Right on. And when you bet pot on the flop, you're giving away too much info, and you're capping your potential winnings. You're basically showing, hey, everyone, I've got a big hand. Come get me. Not exactly the best strategy.
Yeah, not subtle at all.
Yeah.
What about position? How does that play into all of this? The PLO professors seem pretty adamant about how important position is in bomb pots.
He's absolutely right. Position is even more crucial in double board PLO bomb pots than regular PLO. Think about it. You've got these huge pots brewing from the start, and everyone's playing wider ranges because of the force antes, right? Playing out of position early on. It's like walking through a minefield with your eyes closed.
Makes sense. You want to gather as much info as possible before you commit a big chunk of your stack.
Exactly. You need to see how your opponents react on the flop and turn before you make your move. The PLO professor, he uses this great analogy. He calls it putting people in a pickle.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break down this pickle position for me. How do we trap our opponents in this culinary conundrum?
So it's all about leveraging your position on later streets. Let's say you're on the button, right? Action folds to you on the turn. You've got a decent hand, but you're not sure where you stand. You bet small when your opponent's calls. Now, the river comes, you've got position on them, they check to you. This is where the pickle comes in.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What's the play?
You bet again. And you bet big. Now, your opponent is in a tough spot. They might have a strong hand on one board, but they're probably weak on the other. By betting big on the river, you're forcing them to make a decision with incomplete information.
So they're trapped in the pickle jar trying to decide whether to call or fold.
Exactly. They're either going to call and risk their entire stack if you have a better hand on one of the boards, or they're going to fold and potentially give up a huge pot. It's a high-pressure situation, and you created it just by using your position.
This is genius. I'm starting to see the power of this pickle position.
Yeah.
So are we basically saying bet small on the flop to set up these pickle plays later on? Is that the general idea?
It's a great starting point. Both the PLO professor and upswing poker are big on smaller bets on the flop. Think about it. Everyone's coming in with a wide range, so why show your strength early, keep the pot small, keep them guessing, and then bam, you can exploit their weaknesses on later streets.
Okay, small ball poker on the flop, then we set up the big pickle plays later on.
Got it.
But let's be real, sometimes we just flop the nuts, right? What do we do then? Slow play.
Slow playing can be tempting, but it can be dangerous in double board PLO. Remember, you're not just trying to win one pot, you're trying to win both. And if you slow play a strong hand, you risk getting outdrawn on one or both boards.
So what's the alternative? Just jam it all in and hope for the best?
Not quite. There's a middle ground. You can bet for value, but you gotta be smart about your bet sizing. and pay attention to your opponent's tendencies. Hernandez talks about this concept of equity realization.
Okay, new term alert. What the heck is equity realization? Sounds like something you'd learn in business school.
It's basically the idea that you need to bet in a way that lets you get the most value out of your hand, while minimizing the risk of getting outdrawn in double board PLO. This often means betting bigger than you would in a single board game.
So we're not slow playing, but we're not just shoving it in blindly either. We're finding that sweet spot where we can extract value and still protect our hand.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the best way to find that sweet spot, you got to constantly analyze your opponent's range, the board texture, and the potential for future cards to change the game.
This is deep, man. It's like poker meets quantum physics.
It can get pretty complex, but that's what makes it so damn interesting. There's always something new to learn, and the strategies are always evolving.
Well, on that note, I think we need to take a quick break. Our brains are starting to overheat with all this double board PLO goodness. We'll be right back to dive even deeper into the world of bomb pots.
Okay, so we just talked about some of the fundamental differences, between double board PLO bomb pots and like regular PLO.
Yeah, busted some myths about overbetting on the flop. We talk about how crucial position is. Learned of that whole pickle position thing, which I got to say, I'm kind of loving that concept.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful idea. But let's get into some of the more advanced strategies that these pros are using to crush this format. Crush Life Poker talked about this one crazy hand in one of his videos that really shows how important it is to read your opponents and adjust your game plan on the fly,
Okay, lay it on me. What happened?
So he's playing this deep stacked game, right? And he picks up Queen 8-7-4 on the cutoff. Not exactly a monster hand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be getting too excited about that one.
No, definitely not. But the flop comes 4-3 deuce on one board, ace king 10 on the other. So he's got like bottom pair on the low board and some overcards on the high board.
Still not exactly screaming premium hand material.
Nope. But he decides to bet not a huge bet, just enough to protect his potential low hand and maybe steal the pot.
Smart. In double board PLO, you got to be thinking about both boards, right?
Absolutely. Two players call, and the turn brings a 5 on the low board and a 7 on the high board. Bam. He suddenly got 2 pair on both boards.
Okay, things are getting interesting.
Yeah.
Now he's in a pretty strong position.
Yeah, he is. But here's the catch. The player in the big blind leads out with a bet. Crushly Poker realizes that this guy is probably betting with a strong hand on the ace-king-10 board because that's the more static board in this situation.
Hold up a sec. What do you mean by static board?
So a static board is a board where the nuts are unlikely to change much on the river, like a paired board. Or a board where a straight's already completed, the action is pretty much settled.
Okay, got it. So in this hand, the ace-king-10 board is more static because it's not likely anyone's going to hit a miracle card on the river that changes things up.
Exactly. So Crush Life Poker figures this big blind player is probably betting with a strong hand on that static board. Like top pair, maybe even 2 pair.
That makes sense. He's using his opponent's betting pattern to figure out their hand strength.
Right on. And knowing this, Crush Life Poker decides to make a big raise, even though his 2 pair isn't the nuts on either board.
He's putting the pressure on. Is this what you guys call an equity blast?
Bingo. He's betting big with a hand that has decent equity, but it's not necessarily the best hand. He's hoping to fold out better hands that might be scared to call such a large bet.
So he's banking on his opponent not wanting to risk everything, even if they have a good chance of winning half the pot.
Exactly. It's a calculated risk, but it can be super effective. And guess what? The big blindfolds, after thinking about it for a while, mucks ace-queen face up.
No way. He folded top pair, top kicker on a static board because he was scared of getting crushed on the other board.
That's the power of the equity blast. It preys on your opponent's fear of losing, even if they have a strong hand.
This is crazy. So in double board PLO, we're not always just playing the nuts. Sometimes it's about recognizing opportunities to put pressure on our opponents and force them to make tough choices.
Exactly. You gotta be aggressive and unpredictable. Hernandez talks about this too in one of his videos. He says a lot of players are too passive in double board PLO, especially on the river.
So they're just checking it down and hoping for the best.
Yeah, they're scared to bet big because they don't have the nuts on either board. But Hernandez says you should be betting for value way more often than you think.
even if your hand is pretty weak.
Especially if your hand is weak. She says a lot of players will call a river bet with a weak hand on one board if they have a strong hand on the other, right?
They're thinking, well, I'm probably going to win at least half the pot, so why not call?
Exactly. And that's where you can exploit them, by betting for value with hands that wouldn't normally be considered strong in a single board game.
This is like a whole new world of poker.
Yeah.
Are there any other sneaky tricks these pros have up their sleeves?
Let's talk about chasing over pairs. Now, in most forms of poker, chasing over pairs is a rookie mistake.
Yeah, you're usually better off playing more aggressive hands, right?
Right. But in double board PLO bomb pots, it can actually be surprisingly profitable. The PLO professor, he's a big fan of this strategy.
Wait, seriously, that guy is full of surprises. But why would chasing overpairs be a good idea in this format?
Because a lot of times your opponents are making the classic mistake of overvaluing sets on the flop. They flop a set and they think they're invincible. But in double board PLO, sets are way more vulnerable because there are twice as many chances for someone to hit a bigger set or a full house.
So they think they're being clever by slow playing their set, but it backfires because it gives you a chance to catch up with an overpair.
Exactly. And the PLO professor even tells a story about scooping pots with aces up by hitting an overpair on the turn when his opponent slow played a set on the flop.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. So if we flop an overpair in a bomb pot, we're not just automatically folding. We're thinking about the fact that our opponents might be overplaying their sets.
Right. And we're looking for spots to bet for value on later streets when we think we might actually have the best hand.
This is wild. So we're min betting on the flop, equity blasting on the turn, chasing overpairs like maniacs. What other crazy shit are we doing in these bomb pots?
Well, remember how we talked about the importance of position, right? And putting people in the pickle? The PLO professor takes this concept to a whole new level. He actually suggests betting pot on the river in position, no matter what your hand is, when you're in a multi-way pot.
Hold on. You're telling me this guy is just blasting off on the river with any two cards? That's insane.
It might sound crazy, but hear him out. His logic is that the uncertainty of the double board format, combined with the pressure of a pot-sized bet, forces opponents with a worse hand on one board to fold even if they're strong on the other.
So he's basically using fear and confusion as weapons.
Exactly. He's counting on his opponents not wanting to risk their whole stack, even if they think they have a good chance of winning half the pot. And you know what? He says it works a surprisingly large amount of the time.
This guy's a goddamn poker savant. I love it.
He's definitely a unique character. He's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom.
Okay, I think my brain is about to explode with all this double board PLO knowledge.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore.
Let's take another quick break to process all this info. We'll be right back with even more strategies and insights to help you dominate those double board PLO bomb pots.
Okay, I think I finally caught my breath after all that double board PLO craziness. We covered some serious ground here, from min betting on the flop to equity blasting on the river, chasing over pairs like a maniac, and of course, mastering the art of the pickle position.
And let's not forget about betting pot on the river with any two cards. The PLO professor is on another level, man.
Seriously, that guy's a poker wizard. But what's really hit me is just how much depth there is to this game. It's not just about flopping the nuts and praying for the best.
It's a game for thinkers, for sure. You got to constantly analyze the boards, your opponents, and your own hand. You got to be ready to adapt and think outside the box.
It's like poker chess, with twice the variables.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so challenging and so rewarding. The players who can really grasp these concepts, those are the guys who are going to consistently crush these bomb pots. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. What are the key takeaways our listeners should be walking away with from this deep dive? What's the secret sauce to dominating double board PLO bomb pots?
Well, I think the most important thing is to understand that this format is unique. It's not the same as regular PLO. You can't just rely on your old strategies and expect to win.
So we got to toss out the rule book and embrace the chaos.
Pretty much, yeah. You got to be comfortable with uncertainty and be willing to make unconventional plays. Remember, your opponents are going to be making mistakes, and your job is to exploit those mistakes.
I love it. What else?
Position is absolutely crucial. We talked about the pickle position, but even beyond that, you want to play as many hands as possible in position, especially in these bomb pots where the pots get so huge.
Right. The more information we have, the better our decisions are going to be.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get aggressive. This game rewards bold players. Don't be afraid to bet big when you have a strong hand, and don't be afraid to bluff when you think you can get away with it.
So we're not just passively calling and checking our way to victory. We're putting the pressure on
Yeah.
and making our opponents sweat.
Exactly. And finally, never stop learning. This is a complex game with a lot of nuances. Study the hand examples from these pros, analyze your own play, and always keep trying to get better.
Great advice. This has been an awesome deep dive. I feel like my double board PLO game just got a serious upgrade.
Glad to hear it. It's a fascinating game, and I'm always stoked to share what I know with other bowlers.
Well, you've definitely given our listeners a lot to think about. Before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. We talked about how the pickle position can apply to situations beyond poker. How can we use this concept to our advantage in everyday life?
It's all about creating leverage, whether you're negotiating a deal, asking for a raise, or even just trying to convince your partner to watch the movie you want to watch. The pickle position can help you get what you want.
So it's about putting people in a spot where they feel pressured to make a choice that benefits us.
Right. It's about creating a win-win situation where they feel like they're making the best choice, even if it's ultimately the choice we wanted them to make.
Mind games for the win. I love it. Well, that's a wrap on this epic deep dive into the wild world of double board PLO bomb pots. To all you listeners out there, we hope you learned a ton and that you're ready to hit the tables with some newfound confidence and aggression.
Play smart, run good, and always be on the lookout for that pickle position.
Until next time, folks, happy grinding.
Romper room where we ball a break. Big wins, big losses, all at stake. Party vibe, poker life, always crunk. Feel rich, feel broke, that's just the funk, yeah. Seen boys rise, seen boys fall. Bluffing stacks, risking it all. Got the queens, thought I locked the pot. Straight flush flip, now I'm feeling shot. It's the hustle, it's the grind, no time to assume. All in a full life in the romper room.